This is Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review. Are you ready for some football? Canadian football? I know I am. CFL season gets underway this week, this Thursday, June the 23rd. I am beyond excited for the start of the CFL season. We're going to break down each of the games on the weekly slate every week here at Sportsbook Review Videos. We have 4 games on the slate this week, so let's get started and get right to it. Let's take a look at the Toronto Argonauts taking on the Hamilton Tigercats on Thursday night in the season opener. The Toronto Argonauts moving to BMO Field, their brand new stadium, one that should give them a much better home field edge after sharing the Rogers Center with the Blue Jays all these years, and it was a terrible setting for their home games. I mean, there was no ambiance. The crowd was barely half a quarter full for a lot of their games. Very little crowd noise, home field edge, but that should change now with the Argos going to BMO Field, a much more suitable home stadium for the Argos to play in. And really their success this year is contingent upon Ricky Ray, the starting quarterback, the veteran who has been dealing with injuries. The offensive line protecting him has not always been great for the Toronto Argonauts, but they went to address that offensive line in the offseason. They know how important it is keeping Ricky Ray on the field. They got Josh Burke, one of the better tackles in the Canadian Football League in the offseason. That should help along that offensive line. And from all reports that I've read and quotes that I've read from Toronto players, Toronto coaches, Ricky Ray's arm looks as good as it has in the last 2 years here in training camp. So as long as he can get protection and that offensive line should be better, he should be able to have some success offensively. I think defensively they're going to be improved, although it may take time for that defense to come around for Toronto, because it is worth noting new defensive coordinator, Rich Stubler, a lot of new faces on the defensive side of the football. It may take time for that unit to gel, but with Stubler as the DC, a guy that's had great defenses everywhere he's gone, I think in time Toronto should have a better and improved defense here in 2016. Hamilton, on the other hand, they've been a consistent team. They've been competing for a Grey Cup every year since Ken Austin came on board. A great depth, on this team, accumulated by Ken Austin when he was the GM, although now he's just the head coach. He deferred the GM duties to Eric Tillman. Again, Hamilton's got some obstacles to overcome this year. Number 1 quarterback, Zach Collaros, former Cincinnati Bearcat. He suffered a torn ACL last season. He's still recuperating from that, not likely to return until August. So in the meantime, it's Jeremiah Masoli. You remember that name? Former Oregon Duck quarterback, former Ole Miss quarterback. He will be the starting quarterback for Hamilton until Collaros can return. And he had a very good preseason and training camp. And let's not forget his final performance last year in the East Final against Ottawa, filling in for Collaros. He played well. Hamilton lost to Ottawa in the East Final 35-28, but they didn't lose because the quarterback play wasn't good. They couldn't get a stop on defense when they needed it. That's why they lost. But Masoli played well enough for the Ticats to win that game, had a very good training camp. I think he can move this football and do some good things for this offense. The defense is the concern for Hamilton. A ton of personnel departures on the defensive side in the offseason, and in the secondary specifically, and some injuries as well hit this Hamilton secondary as well throughout preseason and training camp. So this could be a defense that the Argos might be able to pick apart a little bit. Toronto a 4.5, 5-point favorite in this game. I'd lean to the Argos. They're going to be fired up for this home opener, new stadium at BMO Field, but they've had such a problem beating Hamilton. I mean, Hamilton's owned this series, and the only 2 victories for Toronto in the last 6 head-to-head meetings against the Hamilton Ticats. The only 2 wins that Toronto got, they were wins by 1 point and a win by 2 points. No margin of victory in either one. No big margin of victory in either one. So that's the concern, laying 4.5, 5 points here with the Argos. I think it is slightly inflated to suit the Argos situation with them opening their new stadium. They'll be fired up. The highly motivated effort expected. Hamilton with some defensive weaknesses. So lean to Toronto, although I'm not concerned. You're getting a great price with them here. And the game probably should be higher scoring, so maybe a lean to the over as well in this game. Let's move on to Saturday, actually. We'll get back to the Friday game at the end of this video, but Saturday, Ottawa takes on Edmonton in a Grey Cup rematch. Should be a very interesting game between those 2 teams. And let's be honest, I mean, the Ottawa Redblacks, they were the surprise story of the CFL last year. There's nothing else you can say. They went from 2-16 in their expansion year in 2014, improved all the way to 12-6 last season, a phenomenal turnaround year for Ottawa. Jason Moss, the new head coach, or the former offensive coordinator, rather, for Ottawa departs, but this offense should still be pretty good. 41-year-old quarterback Henry Burris, not likely to duplicate the incredible year he had last year at his age, and maybe not able to stay healthy for a full season. But if he does, he's got still a very good group of receivers: Greg Ellingson, Chris Williams, Ernest Jackson. Lots of weapons for him to throw the football to. Offense should still be good, even losing Jason Moss, their offensive coordinator. And don't forget, if Burris gets hurt, Trevor Harris, not a bad insurance policy. Trevor Harris played very well filling in for Ricky Ray with the Toronto Argos last year. Defense is the concern for Ottawa. They have a lot of holes to plug, losing key veterans on that side of the football: Sean Lemon, Justin Capicotti, Keith Shawligan, Javon Johnson, all departing from that Ottawa defense last season. So defensive line and secondary could see some changes. So that's going to be interesting. And on the flip side, Jason Moss, now the head coach of this Edmonton Eskimos team, taking that job, bringing his familiar up-tempo, no-huddle offense he really implemented, trying to move at a fast pace with this Edmonton offense in training camp and the preseason. And he's got an offense that really and he inherits an offense that really peaked at the end of last season. Mike Riley played his best football down the stretch, leading the Edmonton Eskimos to a Grey Cup championship. And much like Ottawa, they've got a couple defensive concerns. I mean, they had a lot of NFL defections, which is not a surprise. A lot of NFL scouts raid teams that have won the Grey Cup in the CFL looking for talent that they can invite to NFL training camps. Dexter McCoyle, signed by the Chargers, leaving this Edmonton team. Aaron Grimes, signed by the Philadelphia Eagles. And then Willie Jefferson on the defensive line, signing with the Washington Redskins, all leaving this Edmonton team for an NFL tryout. So holes to fill for sure on the defensive side of the football. They also suffered a pretty key injury in the secondary with John Ocho, one of their top cornerbacks, out for the year with a ruptured Achilles injury suffered in training camp. So Edmonton, a great defense for years, but going to be tested here early on with the personnel departures they've had to deal with on that side of the football. This should be a great game. I'm looking forward to it. We see Edmonton favored right now in the 6.5 point range, total sitting around 53 at this moment in time. I think both offenses are ahead of the defenses right now for these two teams. Maybe you get a little bit of underdog value with Ottawa, but as I said in the CFL season preview video, I think long term Ottawa might be a bet against team. I don't see them duplicating what they did last year. I think they will regress at least a little bit, come back down to earth, and after just being a point spread machine last year, maybe in tough Ottawa to cash tickets and be a winning against the spread football team here in 2016. Calgary and BC, the second game of the Saturday doubleheader here in Week 1. Calgary upended by Edmonton in last year's West Final. A team that's been consistent, though, year in and year out. I have no doubt they'll be in the hunt for a division title and Grey Cup once again. The transition from John Hufnagel, who retired in the offseason as head coach, although he is still the GM, going from Hufnagel and handing over the coaching reins to offensive coordinator Dave Dickinson should be pretty seamless. Dickinson's been with Calgary in a coaching capacity since 2009, so Calgary should be very familiar with Dickinson. Should be a very easy transition having him take over as head coach. New faces at running back for Calgary, of course. Jerome Messam takes over. John Cornish, the longtime dominant running back for the Stampeders, retired due to injuries, recurring injuries that he's dealt with in his career. The offense led by Bo Levi Mitchell, one of the best quarterbacks in the CFL. They shouldn't skip a beat. Now, I know they have to replace two key receivers, Eric Rogers and Jeff Fuller, two great receivers for Calgary, leaving this team for the NFL. But, they did bring in Bakari Grant to replace them from Hamilton, a very veteran, good receiver in this league for years, to join the likes of Anthony Parker, Joe West, and Marquay McDaniel. It should still be a solid receiving core here for Calgary. They'll miss Rogers and Fuller, but I think they're still in good shape there. The defense has been good every single year for Calgary, and it should be good again this year. Taylor Reed comes over from Hamilton to replace Jawan Simpson at linebacker, and he should form a great combo with Deron Mayo in the middle of the field at that linebacker spot. The defensive line is still one of the best in the CFL at stopping the run, at getting pressure on the quarterback, led by Charleston Hughes. They should be fine again, and the secondary does have some playmakers, so wouldn't be a surprise to see Calgary still have one of the best defenses this year in the CFL. On the flip side, BC, Wally Buono back on the sidelines, taking over as head coach. They won the Grey Cup the last time he was the head coach in 2011, but they do have work to do. Can Jonathan Jennings be that number one quarterback to lead this team in the future. It's a changing of the guard after years of Travis Lulay. Jonathan Jennings is now the full-time quarterback for this team. First full season as the starter. How will he do? I think the defense will be improved with Solomon Elimimian back on the field. One of the biggest single impact players in the CFL, especially on defense. Having him back is big. They have their top wide receiver, Emmanuel Arsenault, back after re-signing him in the offseason. The offensive line, from what I've heard, is ready to be upgraded and take a step forward this year. And it doesn't hurt that, Jonathan Jennings, the quarterback, does have mobility, which should help make that offensive line better because he can escape the pocket and obviously negate or at least lessen the amount of sacks and hits that maybe he will take. This should be a very interesting game and a good early first game measuring stick for BC going up against one of the best teams in the CFL. Of course, it's a rematch of a playoff game last year. Calgary throttled BC in the West semifinal. BC will be looking to avenge that. We've got Calgary about a 3.5, 4-point road favorite in this game. Right now, I would probably leave this one alone. That's where I'm leaning right now, but it is worth noting Calgary was not very good in the road favorite role last year. They were a little bit vulnerable at times on the road, 2-4 against the spread as road favorites. And even though they were 14-4 straight up last year, Calgary was 8-10 against the spread, a losing point spread record. So not great value to back Calgary last year. Maybe this point spread is signifying that there may not be great value with them this year. Maybe a little bit of value on BC as a home dog in that game. But again, we got to wait and see first if the Lions are ready to improve this year, which is still an unknown coming into the new season. All right, we are going to wrap up this week's look at the CFL slate for Week 1 with the Play of the Week segment. At the end of each video, I'll have what's called a Play of the Week segment and give you one of my better recommendations on the CFL slate. And I'm going to look at the Friday night Montreal-Winnipeg game, the Montreal Alouettes, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, ESPN2 television matchup on Friday night. Let's put this point spread in perspective with Winnipeg favored by almost a field goal at home. On the surface, you say, okay, that makes sense. Well, then you put this point spread in perspective by looking at how brutal Winnipeg has been. They're 21-51 over the last 4 years. Haven't made the playoffs in each season, and they're 7-20 straight up in 27 home games over 3 seasons here at Investors Group Field since this stadium opened in 2013. Just been absolutely horrendous here on their home field. It's not been a good football team. They've struggled to win at home, and there's a lot of warning signs that I have for Winnipeg coming into the new season. The offensive line struggled last year, struggled again in preseason. Their starting center, Jeff Keeping, out 8 weeks due to an injury suffered in training camp. Drew Willie needs protection. Drew Willie can be a good quarterback for Winnipeg, but if he doesn't get pass protection, he struggles. And this offensive line is still very much a question mark for me coming into the season. They bring in BC Lions running back Andrew Harris to become the new running back here in Winnipeg, but durability is an issue. He's been banged up the last couple of years. His ability to produce is a little bit in question. His production at running back has dropped off the last couple of years, so there's question marks there. Defense should be the strength of this team, but, problems last year was the offense didn't stay on the field long enough. So many 2-and-outs. And they were back on the field again, and that could be the issue again for this defense. And they're in a division which is loaded with some pretty good quarterbacks, pretty good offenses. So, yeah, the Winnipeg defense should be solid, but how good remains to be seen. And on the flip side, we got a Montreal Alouettes team chomping at the bit to get this season going, missing the playoffs for the first time in 2 decades last year. That did not sit well with this team. A lot of quotes from the veterans on this Montreal team saying they want to get the taste out of their mouth of missing the playoffs. Their intense, focused, business-like attitude. Kevin Glenn is the new number 1 quarterback for this team. He's a veteran. He does make mistakes at times, but he's still an upgrade from the mess of a quarterback position that Montreal had last year. Rakeem Cato has improved as training camp has progressed, has established himself as a solid backup option. The former Marshall Thundering Herd quarterback, Cato, has looked good. They get Deron Carter back from an NFL stint. He should bolster them at wide receiver. The defense looks very, very good on paper. They've had a very good defense for years under defensive coordinator Noel Thorpe. Their strength is getting pressure on the quarterback. They've been done very good at notching sacks in recent years. That could be a good matchup for this Montreal defense here against, as I mentioned, this very suspect Winnipeg the Winnipeg offensive line, which has struggled in pass protection. Winnipeg went 0-2 against the spread against Montreal last year, and their only win against Montreal came by just 2 points, and they were outgained by a combined 152 yards in the two meetings against Montreal last year. I think we might have a wrong team favored here. Montreal, to me, at least going into the season, is well positioned to be the better of these two teams right now, and I'm going to test that theory right out of the gate. Let's take a look at the Montreal Alouettes, +2 for your CFL Week 1 Play of the Week. For this first opening week of CFL action, the Montreal Alouettes +2, your play of the week for Week 1 here in the CFL. I actually also leaned to that game under the total of 50.5. I think it could be a lower scoring game, but I like the side a little bit more than the total. So we're going to make it official with Montreal +2. Can get 2.5 as well in some spots, but I'll say +2 with Montreal, your CFL Week 1 Play of the Week. And that is going to wrap things up for my CFL Week 1 preview. I'm Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review. As always, check out sportsbookreview.com every day for the latest in quality sports betting information. Until next time, enjoy the games and good luck.
Always on the go? Bet365 has one of the top mobile platforms in today's market. Sign up today and don't let your busy life keep you out of the game.